This track is like, yo, we're about to go into like a war or something. Like I'm saying goodbye. Like Thanos just snapped his fingers. We lost Spider-Man and now we're ready to fight. Like that's what that song intro felt like. Jesus. This conversation I think is a fun one just because of, for anybody who kind of just pays attention to esports more than just Rocket League, which I know isn't the case for a lot of Rocket League people. A lot of RL Esports fans, Rocket League is the only game they watch. It's the only broadcast they pay attention to. It's also their first esport for a lot. And this topic came to be from asking the Discord, like, yo, what do you guys want to talk about? This was the number one. This was paired with a lot of different things. And a lot of people, the conversation came to be because of the fact that the CSGO major just went down in Rio. If you guys didn't watch, you missed out. There's a couple things to discuss. So the overall topic, what we're discussing today is what it's going to take to make Rocket League Esports jump to that next level. It feels like Rocket League Esports is kind of plateaued. We have seen some massive things change. From season 9 to 10, we got a circuit-based system. Obviously didn't come to full fruition because of COVID. And then we went from 10 to 11, or the 21-22 season, and we finally got to see what Rocket League Esports was supposed to be. Open circuit, plenty of formats, ton of new competition to an extent, massively jumping. You're talking like 160 plus series for a certain team. You got to see different storylines and narratives, more regions. Like, you got to see a lot of really cool stuff. The fact that we have finally and truly an international major or an international world championship, not just the NA and EU show, and then like Sam and OCE are there. It's like you actually got to see competition. OCE teams, you know, consistently trying to get to top 8. You saw South America punch into top 4. The club was super close to making top 8 as well, except for they knocked each other out. You got to see MENA have some highs and some okays. APAC as well as SSA finally got to showcase. But what's next? How do we get to the next step? That's kind of the focus. And I look at Counter-Strike as a really good comparison for a couple of different reasons. Number one, Counter-Strike has been around for 3 decades. It's one of the oldest esports we have outside of like the Unreal Tournament stuff and Quake and, you know, all those. But like Counter-Strike as an esport does a lot of really good things. The number one thing that I think they do better than anybody else is they let the community, they let their fans really dictate how things go about. And I'd say fans in a loose term. Counter-Strike is a game that has basically set a precedent of allowing community members to build up that game, their spectator system, the stat stuff that they do, the ability to watch any individual perspective. You guys know what I'm talking about with HLTV, community made. You're talking about certain maps, the meta shifts, the things that they see implemented into their competitive scene, made by the community. There is a very much so a hands-off approach when it comes to Counter-Strike, to where Valve does everything in its power. Part of this is because they make so much money off of Dota 2. But they basically allow this community to go crazy with ideas, and then Valve steps in and goes, okay, we like a lot of these, but they need to be refined and we need to be a little bit more reasonable. We can't just throw this part in. Let's make a couple tweaks here. Let's add some polish to it, and then we'll implement it. You know, we'll allow you guys to do this Gamba and do your gambling stuff with, you know, pick'ems. You know, you can buy a digital ticket, you get some extra cool stuff. You can make predictions on stuff, and that way you can get, you know, cool signatures and stickers for your guns in game. A chance to get really unique items and create this economy that you guys want. Cool, we'll do that as well. But they then, and the biggest one, is they basically remove limitations from what events are ran. And this provides a lot of opportunity for a lot of different people. You're talking broadcast talent, you're talking organizers, tournament organizers, admins, graphic design, like between Blast and ESL and everything else. There is a lot of competition, and there's a lot of teams that they're able to support because of that. And when you compare that to Rocket League Esports, Psyonix is pretty closed off. They're pretty secretive about what they're doing. They're very specific about their baby because they did hit a diamond in the rough and they don't want it to go away. Totally justifiable. It's their first game, their first true big game. They used to be a contractor, and now they are trying to be a AAA esports company and are growing, you know, working with Epic. Again, what Rocket League and Psyonix have accomplished in the last 7 years, quite impressive, is not common in the industry of video games / esports. Having a game that lasts almost a decade, not a thing. Not too common. So the difficulty that it has been is when Psyonix originally started with Rocket League, their goal was to get 10,000, 20,000 concurrent people playing. They hit 100,000 And ever since that moment, they went from being a dev team that would be in Twitch chats and interact and hang out, or a dev team that would do streams that kept you updated on stuff. And again, this is being critical, but they are doing other things outside of this. Like, they do have the behind the scenes, like when they made some of the new features or like a new game mode or something. They had the knockout game mode. They did a behind the scenes thing with the Q&A with devs and gave us some insight on that. That stuff's amazing. But the last time we saw a live stream was when Dave, the CEO, ate bread. Like, we haven't seen a live stream from them ever since, which is crazy. That was like 7-8 years ago. It's crazy. They have definitely, it felt like mentality wise, shifted gears into how do we capitalize monetarily, which is crazy because they didn't even find a, like, I'm gonna keep going on tangents on this because it's crazy. Like, you release Sideswipe with no monetary options in a mobile game. There is literally 0 ways to spend money in Sideswipe. A game that is on mobile, the most accessible platform, because as you know, the Blizzard memes, we all have phones. Massive opportunity to provide steady cash flow into your game. So don't know why that didn't happen. But overall, we have not seen innovation brought, it feels like. They are relying on third-party things like Baka's mod to do in-game overlays and spectator updates. How much of this is chalked up to Unreal Engine 3 and the difficulty it is to implement new stuff? Don't know. Don't think it's a good enough excuse anymore. But for Rocket League Esports to take that next big step, there's quite a few things that need to happen. I think we can look at the broadcast quality of Counter-Strike to compare to that. You look at the way that they handle their interviews even. We have seen Psyonix try things. It is met with negative, like a negative response, and then they completely give up on it. For example, exit interviews. We did exit interviews in Season 6 World Championships immediately after the team left. And the questions, as much as I love Larry, a little bit iffy. But it is also a way for Rizzo to say goodbye to his fan base and the crowd for the last time of the season. It's kind of a send-off. He's, instead of being upset about the loss and then leaving, it is a crowd applauding him and cheering for him to be like, we are excited to see him next season. If you approach it like Counter-Strike, where you go to the post-game analysis, you give the ability to kind of settle down a little bit, you know, you get over the woes. You know, it still hurts, but let's reflect on that. Let's talk about that stuff. And we're going to do it 5-10 minutes after the loss, and you have some chance to like reflect. Then we can have an exit interview. We can hear about the insight. We can become more invested in those things, right? It's little things like that that we're missing out on. Regionals feel kind of copy paste. A lot of people, and you even saw a thread about that on the subreddit. Someone literally put out a thread that says Psyonix doesn't care about regional competition. They're lacking social media. Invitationals for NNEU are the most critical and exciting events of the split. Despite this, the RL Esports Twitter only managed to produce 26 and 20 tweets respectively across the entirety of the invitational playoff bracket. None of them will inform potential viewers about qualification scenarios. None of the teams that did any of that stuff, they did, you know, this team is qualified posts. They didn't retweet any direct information about stats. There was no regional branding. And there was no content. And that's the big one, is LANs do so well, not just because we're there in person. Like, you're talking a lot of your dedicated fan base is not even watching at home now. They're watching in person. So your viewership should essentially go down. But because of the broadcast quality, because of the additional content that is shot, the interview stuff, all of that is just so heightened because the people are there in person. And this, again, goes back to some of the issues that I have with our age restrictions. When you have 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, you just can't do as much of that. And it is a product that is going to struggle because of that. The complication that you get is a lot of different factors added up that lead to success elsewhere. You're not dealing with kids at a young age, so you're able to have a little bit more freedom about what you can demand and require of them of traveling and everything else. The broadcast quality is like what the shots that they do of the crowd, the way that they show player reactions, the replay stuff, like you're watching a shot of like a super clutch like 3-kill 1v3, and not only do you have the shot of the replay that happens, it immediately goes back, and then they retroactively show just that player's reaction of the clutch, and like little things like that not only emphasize the player and the moment and everything like that, it gets you so much more invested. The stage setup, the way they go about doing that stuff, a lot of these things I think Psyonix does really, really well. I think if you go to a LAN and you get that fan experience, they do really well in encapsulating that feeling. But when you look at all the small nuances between like Counter-Strike and Rocket League Esports, you can tell the difference between the refinement process over 3 decades of doing it. I don't know if it's just a time thing or what, but the broadcast quality, like if you've watched, like, yeah, I think Roger brings up a good point. Like I don't remember it particularly because I was there in person. I didn't see like what the stream was seeing, but like imagine Jan's goal goes in and they win that 2-second time. You see the replay. Immediately after that replay, you then see Jan's perspective of his like intensity of looking and then the build up and then like emphasizing that moment. Those types of things, I think, miss the mark. I don't know the amount of times that I've seen people at home talk about how the audience isn't like mic'd appropriately and you can't get that atmosphere and that feeling back home. But the entire time of the CSGO major, I hear vuvuzelas, all of the Furia fans singing every second of the day. You've got Banks out in the crowd doing interviews and hanging out with the fans outside and like showcasing the experience of what it's like to be there. And those types of things, I think we just missed the mark on. I really do. I think there's so many things that Rocket League Esports does well. But I look in comparison to Counter-Strike and I go, we are nowhere close. Not even remotely close to what they're attempting to do. Is that because of the age restrictions? Is that because of the time that they've had to develop? Is that because of the ability to let the community have the ability to utilize the API and go crazy with some of the spectator features and the observing things that they can do and the interaction and the investment that people can make into the pick'ems, and like it's all the things that just add up that I think are why you go back and look and go, man, this just isn't the same. This is not even close. I think right now Rocket League Esports is in a year of refinement and they are trying to figure out what is the appropriate format, what's the right way to approach these seasons are. And I think the biggest issue right now is you are going to see, I think, 2 things that have been done in many other esports that are not done right now in Rocket League. And I know it's very tough because our teams are only 3 players. Number 1, there is most likely going to be international trade restrictions. I don't think they're going to continue to allow 2/3 plus of a team come from another region and take spots. You see it in every other game that eventually those are going to be an issue. Gen G is a prime example. I don't think any discredit to Jack or Nolly. It's a good opportunity. They're getting paid the bag. Everything's awesome. Good for them. Love them for that. Makes the region more competitive. Competitive integrity, I think it's great. I don't have any issues with it, but I do think that they are going to need to put trade restrictions in. That's part of it. I think it's inevitable. You just saw it done in Valorant. You got to increase the age restriction. I think with these kids in high school and the expectation and everything like that, you are asking way too much of these young kids. It's too much. And if they were like high school seniors with the decision of, do I continue to compete as a professional or do I take a gap year? Increase the age to 17. I think 17 is a good age for it. You still have that in between. You start them at 17. You put in a grandfather clause that states if you are 15 by this season, 2022, 2023 season, if you hit 15 before this time, you're fine. You're grandfathered in. Anybody else after that? You know what? We got to make a change. We got to make it easier. And then, yeah, you do have a couple stragglers like the Daniels and the Aquas and the younger kids. So be it. And you increase it. And now you have the ability to do more traveling. You have the ability to do longer stays. You have the ability to make better content that is throughout the entire year, not just at the majors. And you can start to see better scrim results. You can see people able to practice at normal times. And you have better quality of life because these players aren't going to school from, 7 or 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon and then having to do this after. Like, you get rid of that school time constriction and you can do the other stuff. You take these steps that allow you to then go and you refine the last process, which I think is the big one. There has got to be time for a break. Now, for teams that didn't make the spring major in the World Championship, you had a pretty long break. But if you are making that, which you're talking 24 teams, and if not the most important 24 teams, you had 6 weeks, a month and a half to rest, which isn't even rest, because in that 6.5 weeks, people are leaving their vacations early because of trade transfers and players going to different teams. You're scrimming for new results. Like, no one really got a break. 6.5 weeks, right back at it, run it again. I think the conversation that we need to have, and if you guys want me to do so, in the comments down below, I will pull some of the bigger brains in this community. I will ask Gibbs. I will ask some of the people in this scene. Let's sit down and talk about what it would be like to have a 2-split format. A long conversation about how would we propose a format that is a little bit more refined, less splits, a little bit more time for downtime. How long is the break? When are we running things? Let's schedule this out. How can we accomplish this so we still have good competition, a little bit simpler, and a chance to build this? Because I think the three things that really need to happen, again, as a reiteration, more content year round, not just at LANs. Increase the age to 17 so you can actually go and do stuff without the conflict of school and missing classes and all that kind of stuff. Because when you got kids talking about dropping out of school, I think that's a problem, especially from a company like Psyonix that has always advocated for getting education and supporting that. And number three, gotta have time for breaks. People are burnt out. You see it in the viewership, you see it in everything else. People are burnt out, and it's gonna be a problem. This, ironically enough, was the same thing that happened in Counter-Strike. It's not coming from a place of just I feel this way. Counter-Strike had this exact same problem, and then I mean all the players, all the staff, everybody was like, we need a dedicated 3 months. We need 3 months to just check out. It's important. It's really important. So again, you want to see Rocket League Esports take that next step, go to the next level. I hope Psyonix looks at the other esports that are doing what they're doing at a higher tier, because I think nobody here is disagreeing with the fact that Rocket League has the potential to be one of the biggest esports in the world. It has all the right makings of things. We can go into other tangents that I talked about like how non-standard maps not being in RL Esports has completely killed the like depth that Rocket League needs, and maybe making the map a little bit bigger. Like, all those different things are subjective opinion pieces, but like there is so many things that are happening. You're seeing the burnout, you see the mentality issues, you're seeing, you know, the mental health stuff like Javi's talking about with Monkey Moon and others, and what Justin's going through. Like, there's some things that really need to change. So let me know what you guys think. Maybe I'm off my rocker, maybe I'm crazy, but I do think this is some important stuff that needs to happen, and it needs to happen fast. So again, let me know if you guys like these types of things. Like, subscribe, notifications, you know how it be. But Rocket League Esports trying to go to that next level, it's gonna take some big refinement process, and why not now? It's my opinion. See you in the next one.